Imagine making a huge, solemn vow to God. It is a massive spiritual commitment. But what if life gets in the way and you need to take that vow back? Today we are cracking open Leviticus 27, an ancient rulebook that reveals a surprisingly detailed spiritual economy. Let's see what happens when you put a cash value on a sacred promise. This chapter isn't just a random list of rules. It lays out an incredibly organized system, acting like the official terms and conditions for sacred vows. It gave people a clear process for converting a spiritual promise into a tangible payment. True commitments require measurable terms. When an organization translates its abstract promises into quantifiable metrics, it forces leadership to treat those commitments as binding contracts. The bedrock of this entire system was a standardized currency, the sanctuary shekel. This wasn't just any old coin. It was a specific, regulated weight of silver. Using it ensured that every sacred transaction was consistent and fair. A healthy community requires a standardized currency of accountability. You cannot evaluate performance fairly unless everyone is measured against the exact same objective baseline, eliminating subjective favoritism. The system gets very specific when a vow involves dedicating a person, but listen closely. The text isn't putting a price on a person's life or fundamental worth. It is assigning a monetary value to the vow itself based on age and gender. A man in his prime working years was valued at 50 shekels, while a woman was 30. Economic systems always encode social structures, and the way a society assigns financial value permanently reflects its underlying assumptions. But what if somebody made a vow and realized they couldn't afford it? The system actually had a brilliant provision. They could go to the priest, who would assess their genuine situation and set a flexible value based on what they could actually pay. The most resilient systems bend before they break. Building in compassionate, case-by-case flexibility ensures the system doesn't crush the most vulnerable people it was designed to guide. This super detailed system extended to personal property, like animals and houses. If you wanted to buy back an unclean animal that wasn't suitable for sacrifice, the steps were clear. The priest sets the value, you pay it, and then you add an extra 20% penalty on top. Reversing a major commitment should never be friction-free. Adding a calculated cost to changing your mind makes redemption possible, but heavily discourages making massive promises lightly. The rules for land were a whole different ballgame because they were tied to the year of Jubilee. This was a massive societal reset when all land returned to its original family owners. So the value of dedicated land was based strictly on how many years were left until the next Jubilee. Long-term vision prevents short-term exploitation. Evaluating an asset based on its eventual return to the community changes how responsible you manage it. You might think this covered everything, but there were big exceptions. Certain items were considered so inherently holy that they couldn't be dedicated through a personal vow in the first place. Firstborn male animals and the tithe already belonged to the Lord automatically. A strong culture must have non-negotiable assets. If an organization allows its foundational core values to be commodified or traded as bargaining chips, it loses its fundamental identity. Finally, there was a special category of items devoted to the Lord. They were set apart so absolutely that they could never be sold or redeemed. This included persons set apart for destruction, referring to extreme judgment. It was the ultimate irrevocable form of dedication. Certain strategic decisions are irreversible points of no return. Once leadership fully commits to a definitive action, they must burn the ships and remove any option for turning back. This ancient text is basically a spiritual ledger, bringing order and economic principles to a community's most sacred commitments. It forces us to think about how we quantify the things we care about. This leaves us with two powerful questions to chew on today. If we had to create a ledger for our society's most sacred values today, what exactly would be on it? And how does your own community or organization define the true value of its commitments and negotiates its relationship with the things that matter most? Take a moment, breathe, and let them sink in.